Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Random Redshirt podcast. I am one of the hosts, Zach, and with me is the other host, Chris. What's up, Chris?
Hello, everyone. Hello, Zach. Great to be here. Great to see you. It's been a great couple of, well, very busy couple of weeks.
Yeah.
Yeah, we've been working hard. So great to be back. And
Yeah, we're a little bit behind on our reviews. It's been busy. Life happens, work happens. Unfortunately, this is not our day job. This is a side thing. So we had to kind of take a break for a few weeks and take care of work and schedules and life and things happening and stuff. But we're very happy to be back. And this is coming fast and quick, right? We're going to be doing 3 episode reviews in a matter of 3 days and catching up to where we're at in Strange New Worlds. So we
yeah,
look forward to it. It's been busy, since we last recorded, Chris.
hmm
There is now a writer's strike and an actor strike going on. Uh,
that's incredible. Yeah.
yeah, first time since 1960, the writers and the actors have both been on strike at the same time. So because I have, and we both have friends who are writers and actors, we just want to lend our support to the writers and actors in their strike. And we hope that everything goes well and that they're able to get back to work soon and they're able to get the negotiations and get the proper compensation and stuff that they're due. So we're right there with you guys. And we hope that you guys get back to work soon. We've had so many amazing guests that are part of SAG and a part of the Writers Guild, Writers Union, that we just hope that everything goes well, and we're pulling for them.
Yeah, absolutely. It takes so much work and dedication to work on their craft and be creative, um, and and come up with those stories that we love like every day that have a lot of depth and detail and meaning. So absolutely, there's so much creativity involved in there and work involved in
Yeah,
making. Yeah.
and the things that they're fighting for, I think, are very important. You especially look at the this idea of using AI to write scripts, which would cause a lot of writers to lose their jobs, and AI for the studios to use in order to use their likeness and them not get paid for that. I mean, there's a
Mhm.
lot of things that are out there right now. If you go around and read and do some research on what's happening, and we're a little bit behind in the sense that this has been going on now for several weeks, at least both at the same time. Both strikes happen at the same time. But again, yeah, we've had a lot of people on here who've been very gracious to us and lent us their time and shared so much with us. We've been so grateful that we just want to say we're standing with them, and we hope that everything gets resolved very soon.
Absolutely, absolutely beautiful.
So yeah, the last time we were here, the last time we were talking about, oh yeah, and San Diego Comic-Con just happened recently too. That was last weekend. And so a friend of mine was there at Comic Con, and one of the days he was at Comic Con,
Yeah.
he was wearing a Random Redshirt podcast T-shirt.
Oh, you're kidding.
I'm not kidding. Yep. In fact, he built a lineup of shirts that he was going to wear for the convention this last weekend as the time of this recording, and our podcast shirt made the cut.
Oh, that's incredible.
So he
That's
was he was
incredible.
repping out he was repping us at San Diego Comic Con. So we appreciate that.
Absolutely, and absolutely. And for those of you that want to get a random red shirt, right? So we do have the shirts at our online platform store.
Yep.
Um, yeah, then and I think the link is in our YouTube video, so people
Yep.
can go right in
It's
the
in the
link.
description below. So just check out below. You can see our social media sites and the link to this Teespring store. You can pick up your own red shirt and join us as part of the Random Red Shirt group.
That's right. Yeah, that's
The difference
absolutely
is though that we survive every episode. At least we tried to. We tried to anyways.
indeed.
Um, but the last so lots happened obviously,
Yeah.
and the last time that we were here, we talked about Among the Lotus Eaters, and we got really deep on that episode. It was a it that I kind of mentioned, if you go back and watch my
hmm
review, and I won't give you all the details of it, you'll have to go back and watch it. But that episode really hit me hard with just some of the stuff they were talking about and some of the ideas and some of the lines. I thought, and I mentioned this before, I think it was, to me, one of the best written episodes of Star Trek that I've seen in quite some time, and I think it stands up there with some of my favorite ones written. So
Yeah, we went multi-layered. And that
yeah,
was excellent. That was excellent. And you can even um go like further and connect it with other science fiction genres. When you think about Blade Runner and replicants and the meaning of memories for those replicants
Yeah.
and that making them human. So wow, it just connects along a whole lot of different stories and topics there. It's really
Yeah,
cool.
the writing in it was great. The acting
Yeah.
in it was great. I thought it was just a really fantastic episode. It wasn't full of a massive amount of action. It wasn't, some big huge space battles or some type of crazy thing, but it was just at the core of what that episode was Star Trek, right?
Hmm.
Telling stories and making you think and really giving you something to reflect on. So that was
Yeah.
great. But
Yeah.
so we're back with the next episode in the line of Strange New World season 2, and that was episode 5 called Charades. Now the great thing is Charades. It's kind of a fun, lighthearted name for an episode, and so is the episode.
Mhm. And I really like these lighthearted episodes. We need them, particularly when we're all working hard and we're involved in serious topics. And it's nice to come back and then have a light episode and then enjoy the personalities in the show. Enjoy the personalities that come out, whether it's Pike, whether it's Spock, whether it's Chapel or T'Pring. Just enjoy their kind of light personalities and laugh along with it and have a good ride like right there. So this
Yeah,
yeah, yeah.
and I've noticed. Sorry, go ahead.
No, no, yeah, yeah. So this was to watch it, to unwind with this, to enjoy this episode was a great experience for me.
Yeah, it same. And
Yeah.
this episode starts out how the next episode starts out, which we'll talk about on our next review, which will be out very soon at the time of this recording. You'll see this come out very quickly. Um, we're getting another episode that is centric to another character, right?
Yeah. Hmm.
And we've talked about this already in our reviews about how this season has found a way. I think if you look at this season so far, this season's doing a little bit of like what TNG did. TNG had a lot of character specific episodes, right? You'd have data centric episodes. There was a couple, some Geordie centric episodes. Warp. Every character had a few centric episodes, right?
Yeah.
They did it in DS9. They did it for a fair amount in Voyager too. But Star Trek has tended to do that. TOS, I don't know that TOS necessarily did a ton of that. They did some, but TNG really did a lot of that. And this episode, like many in this season so far, has been centric to a specific character. And this one
Hmm.
happens to be centric to your favorite character, Nurse
Yes, Nurse
Chapel.
Chapel, beautiful Nurse Chapel, which I really, really enjoyed. And you know what's great is when we think about Strange New Worlds and the characters are in there. There's one aspect where you go, oh, they've got Pike in there, they've got Spock in there, they've got Nurse Chapel in there. These characters, they're already established. What more could we possibly learn about or enjoy about seeing what these characters do? But they take it, and the writers take it, and the show creators take it. And there's so much they do with it, which I think is great. Like Nurse
Yeah.
Chapel was in TOS, and yes, she's an established character. She's established in the canon and established in the mythos. But now they're just expanding it, and they're taking it and running with it, and running with a great direction. I think because we know in TOS there was that hint of feeling between the original Spock, Leonard Nimoy, and then Nurse Chapel, and now they're taking it, running with it, making it great, and then having this great story that we can enjoy, having this great triangle that we can enjoy. And along the way, we get to learn more about Vulcans. We get to learn more about T'Pring. T'Pring was an established character in TOS, but now um, she's like a great fleshed out character. And
Yeah, I
yeah,
think what's great is you have these characters that are established in TOS, but they don't have a massive backstory. They don't have a ton of episodes to flush the character out. Well, now we're starting to get more of that, right? This is not the first episode we've seen T'Pring in. She was in season 1,
yeah.
right, of Strange New Worlds. Obviously, Nurse Chapel is getting a lot more time and a lot more character development in Strange New Worlds than she did in TOS. So I think this is great that we're getting these kind of character focused episodes. where we get to learn more about them. You know, characters like Spock and Kirk and McCoy and Scotty and all that stuff. They obviously are very fleshed out. They're main characters. We know a ton about them. It's those other characters within that maybe we don't know as much. I mean, I would say you could argue, we didn't know as much about Uhura's past
Mm-hmm.
as maybe we did about Kirk's past or Spock's past. Clearly we didn't know that about Chapel, but then we also get some of these new characters, right? Lieutenant Ortegas, we had an episode specific about her already. We're now having an episode specific about Chapel. We've had an episode specific about Leon, who is a new character.
Mm-hmm.
So we're getting that. They've just done a great job of mixing in new characters and developing them versus also giving us characters we already know, but developing them in a way that we hadn't seen yet.
Absolutely. And Spock's mother, Amanda, who's been played by a few different actresses.
Yeah.
And I really like the actress that plays her now, Mia Kirshner, I believe is her name. But now I think we've seen more of Amanda than we have perhaps seen in in Star Trek, all of Star Trek before. And
Yeah.
and seeing her character kind of fleshed out, which I thought was terrific that they do. Excellent, excellent.
Yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
All right, well, let's jump into this. So
Yeah.
Charades opens with a personal log from your girl, Christine Chapel.
Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. And they're en route to the Vulcan system, of course, where they're going to survey an ancient moon and learn about, of course, a strange anomaly that's back there. So they've got a strange anomaly to learn from, and they want to learn, get some answers from a hidden, not a hidden, but a lost alien race that they know not enough about. And we learn a little bit that Nurse Chapel has a love for anthropology, and that she wants to apply for an internship. I believe it's an internship, like with
I think so.
Yeah, the Vulcan Science Academy or some
or like
some
or an
Vulcan.
exchange, something like
Yeah.
that. Yeah, she wants to go study at the Vulcan Science Academy or Vulcan medicine. Yeah, something like that.
Yeah, and that'll definitely serve her interest. Plus, give her a break from the tension that she's been having with Spock there too. So
yeah, there's been just a little bit of that.
A little bit of tension.
Yeah.
So it's kind of interesting that she's studying for that in her free time, getting quizzed from her friends, from Dr. Mbenga, and preparing for this interview. And it's kind of interesting that her friends say, "Hey, why aren't you getting help from Spock to prepare for this application and for the interview?" And she's like, "Yeah, she either says something like it's a long story or it's complicated." So I thought that was good. That was good. And we've got Spock. He's suppressing all of his emotions and kind of managing to do that, and taking the advice from Dr. Mbenga, and kind of hiding his personal feelings from Nurse Chapel as much as he can. But when they still see each other in the treble lift or see each other in sick bay, I do like it, where you definitely see that tension, and it's kind of funny. There's definitely the tension and the feeling between them there.
Yeah.
So they do get assigned together to be on a shuttlecraft to go see the subspace anomaly. And so that's where kind of the start of the problem of the episode happens. And so I like that, where they're going to go see the subspace anomaly, and then something happens, and they get in trouble in the shuttlecraft, and they crash, and then there's a big there's an accident. Everything goes white, right? And then there's an accident. You see Spock come to on the table in the sick bay, and you see the Dr. Mbenga and Captain Pike kind of look at him, and he's like, "What's going on? What's going on?" And then they realize, "Hey, Spock, how are you feeling?" And Spock is now human. And and this is great, because I thought this was really original, because in TOS, in original Toss and the early movies, right? Spock is always maybe fighting that human part of him. He always tries to embrace being Vulcan and have that logical side, but now he's completely human. So you can see him experience like all of those emotions, all of those feelings um, fully. So that was great. And then it definitely gave us like a moment to enjoy Spock and a lot of comedic moments too there. So that
A
was
lot of comedic moments. I would say that even in Toss, and maybe not the Toss movies, because I think Spock's humor in the Toss movies is not underrated. It's very good,
yeah.
and it's not downplayed at all or anything. But maybe sometimes some of the stuff he does or says in the original series maybe a little bit underrated. I feel like I think Spock's always had a comedic presence to himself
Mm-hmm.
that he's obviously unaware of at many times because of his Vulcan nature.
Spock is my I go back and forth between Picard and Spock as my favorite characters. So he is up there.
Yeah, I got him right there.
Oh,
Right there too.
nice. Beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful. And of course, the lovely Leonard Nimoy Spock is just endeared in all of our hearts. So
Yeah, it's a cultural icon, right? He's a
yeah.
Spock and the lexicon. I mean, it's part of our lexicon, and live long and prosper and the Vulcan salute. It's all part of I do think we must say, especially on this episode, that Ethan Peck does a really great job as Spock. I've really grown to enjoy his character very much. I don't know if Ethan ever got a chance to meet Leonard Nimoy the way Zachary Quinto did,
Mhm.
because Zachary Quinto got, they were in the same movie together. And then of course they appeared at a convention together back in, I want to say it was like 2009, maybe 2010. And I think I was at the convention in Vegas where they were both on stage together. And it was pretty special, right? It was almost like this handing off of the baton. And then of course, Zachary Quinto did the 3 Star Trek movies as Spock, in the JJ verse that we don't speak of. But he was a good Spock. I will say,
Yeah.
regardless of the storylines and the writing of the movies, he was a good Spock. But I've thought Ethan Peck has been a fantastic Spock.
Yeah. He has his own twist on Spock. Right.
And that's okay, right? He's not trying to be Leonard. If he was trying to be Leonard Nimoy, he would fail because there's only one Leonard Nimoy. So he's putting his own twist on it. But I think what he's doing is really fantastic.
Yeah, I agree. It is fun. So he's in this predicament now where he's human, and then he's been notified by his fiancee T'Pring that it's time to do their special ceremonial like engagement dinner. I think that's a dinner, right? It's a ceremonial
It's a whole thing.
Yeah.
It's a ceremony, and he's got to like serve them tea, and he's got to do all this stuff basically to try and win T'Pring's, his future mother-in-law. Basically, he's got to try and win, T'Pring's mother's approval. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. So that is the conundrum and the circumstance that they've got to get past with him, like being human, which gives us a kind of a lot of great moments there. His mother does like beam aboard, and I thought that that was pretty funny scene where his mom Amanda beams aboard and Spock comes in and he's wearing a beanie hat. And
God, that was so freaking funny. Oh my gosh. And then like Spock and Pike, I think, look at each other, and she's like, never seen you wear that. Oh, it's an issue or whatever. And Pike's like, oh yeah, I've got one just like it, or something like that.
Yeah. Yeah, absolutely. And sorry, I'm jumping around a little bit, but I did like the montages where, so when Spock he's decided to go back to duty, he's fully human. He's kind of enjoying being social with his other crewmates. So you see him eating and enjoying food with Captain Pike, and he says something like, "Oh, well, I've been missing out on this," and he just with whatever food they've been
He's
eating.
eating bacon.
Yeah.
He's like, oh my gosh,
bacon.
this is so good. Yeah.
Yeah.
We all know bacon's good. I mean, so
good. Yeah. Captain Pike's like, why don't you slow down? And then
yeah,
a moment later is like, I feel nauseous.
yeah, because before in the episode earlier, right, he was there with Pike cooking, but then he couldn't really smell anything, right? Because everything's
Mhm,
suppressed and stuff. And so you
mhm.
get kind of the twofold approach.
He had that little moment with Leon, like your girl, that was
Yep.
really cute, where she's asking him how he's feeling, and she's he's saying, "Hey, I've got this range of emotions, and then I've got these urges," something like that. You
Yeah,
see
they
the look on
start.
her face,
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's as if he is a pre-pubescent or almost going into puberty teenager, right? And he's starting to feel all these things for the first time, and it's this kind of like awkward teenager moment between with Spock. And yeah, very well done.
Yeah, that was good. And
Leon is just like Leon. You could tell she's just like, oh,
I'm to go. Yeah.
yeah, 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 I understand or whatever.
Yeah. So that was good. That was good. We we have Amanda's kind of, I love Amanda's look, where she's looking at Spock, and Spock's complaining about, why do we need this dinner anyways, and we should just tell them to leave, and it's not time. And Amanda just kind of looks at him, and she says, take off your hat. And I thought that was a great moment. And
She knows she's a mom. She
yeah,
knows.
she's a mom. And he just kind of, he doesn't say anything, he just immediately does it. And she's like, oh, you're human. um, which kind of touches off like these great moments of, so now that she's discovered he's human, that gives Amanda a chance to connect with him more, right? Because
Yeah.
she hasn't connected with him ever in that way. So it gets like, well, I'm gonna have to. We get to the point where she's saying, well, I'm gonna have to teach you how to be human, and then teach you how to lie so you can get through this dinner.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, and I thought that was great when they go through those moments. And um they were talking about one ceremony, a part of the dinner, where it's like um the in-laws have to say everything that they've got to improve upon.
Yeah, like they're like airing of grievances. It's almost like
Airing of
it's almost
grievances. Yeah.
yeah, it's all or no, they don't call it grievances. Something like things to improve upon or things to improve yourself.
Yeah.
It kind of reminded me a little bit of the scene in Seinfeld from Festivus where they have the airing of the grievances, and
Oh,
it's
yeah,
just
yeah.
like yeah, you know what I mean. It's just like we're just gonna talk about all the bad things and yeah, I thought that was funny, and we know too. I mean, T'Pring's father doesn't seem to care, but T'Pring's mother, you can tell she's really not keen on this whole idea, especially because Spock's half human, so she's not up on the idea of her daughter marrying a half human, half Vulcan.
Yeah, absolutely not. Absolutely not. And I love T'Pring's father. So they enter the room, right? And he's like, "Oh, this is a nice place." And T'Pril's like, "Oh, well, it smells." He's like, "Oh, yeah, yeah, I guess it smells." And then when they're eating the food, he's like, "Oh, this is delicious."
Yeah,
And T'Pril's like, "Well, this is not authentic, or this is not how it should be." "Oh, yeah, I guess you're right. Yeah, it's not."
yeah.
So,
I will say, like, all right, I think the dad's funny.
mhm.
Um, I think the exchanges between him and T'Pril are funny. I'm not necessarily a fan of the way they wrote him because they kind of write him like he's an idiot. Like T'Pring's mom is clearly the head of the house, which I don't have necessarily an issue with. She's their Vulcan, but uh, but to me, I just kind of feel like they almost made him like a little bit of like a dimwit,
Mhm.
and he's just kind of yeah. I wasn't really a big fan of that, although I do like some of the humoristic, interplay between the two of them.
Yeah, yeah, that was good. Uh, and I'm sorry again for jumping around in our audience. That's okay. Just bear with us as we jump around through the episode. But this is, as far as we know, the spatial anomaly and then the aliens we meet in this episode. And I think they're called the Kevorkians. I think that's right. Kevorkians or Kovorians. This is the first time that we encounter them in Star Trek.
I think so.
Yeah, and Pike speaks to them, and one of them, I think he speaks to an entity called Yellow. And then we've got Chapel and Uhura and Ortega that end up going back there and meeting them, and they talk to a couple different entities, yellow and blue, I think, that are there. So we don't know any. I think this is a fresh kind of alien race. We know very, very little about them. I think they live in a different dimension.
Yeah,
So
they're not normal, the normal type of aliens we meet in Star Trek.
yeah, yeah. But it was their doing, right, that turned uh, Spock fully human. So apparently, like, he was injured in the shuttlecraft incident, and so they did what they called a remediation to him, and uh, the pattern that they had to go off of, which was Nurse Chapel, which was
Yeah,
fully human, and so they restored Spock uh, fully human because they thought they didn't understand that he was half human, half Vulcan, and they didn't understand. They thought that was irregular or not supposed to be like that, so they
right.
made him fully human. So a little bit of backdrop and backstory on the aliens there. And I guess I thought that was okay. I thought that was uh, a good kind of mechanism to kind of pull the story along and the reason why Spock became human. I hope that they use them in the future. Whether in Strange New Worlds or other Trek, because I think there's a lot more that we can kind of enjoy learning about from these new alien species. That's how I felt. I don't know how you
Yeah.
felt the same. Yeah. So this whole time, Nurse Chapel and Dr. Mbenga, they're trying to figure out how to get Spock back to being half Vulcan, half human. And so they're going through a lot of different treatment protocols and studying, and they're all failing. And I know Nurse Chapel's like really, really upset. Um Mbenga's like saying, "Well, try this," and she's like, "No, that's gonna fail. That's gonna fail." So they're
Yeah, because she
yeah,
knows she's up against kind of a time crunch, right? Like she knows that if she doesn't fix this, that Spock is going to stay human forever and he's going to lose his Vulcan side. And I think she kind of realizes that, that Vulcan side makes him as much of who he is as anything else.
yeah, yeah, absolutely. So after she kind of gets stuck, then she goes, well, the only way that they can get him back, his Vulcan side back, is to go back to the aliens and take the shuttlecraft and go back in there and ask the aliens how to do it. So that kind of sets off where she talks to Mbenga and Uhura, and she crafts this plan, and they hatch this plan to take the shuttlecraft there and go do it. And so actually, this I want to talk to you a little bit about. This is where I have a little bit of heartburn on this part of the episode, because they do take that craft, they do go to the anomaly again, they are able to meet the aliens, and they talk to both the alien blue and they talk to the alien yellow, and there's a lot of back and forth, and Chapel is able to convince Yell to say, "Hey, no, will you please like restore him? Will you please help? And I'm his friend, and I've got feelings for him." The issue I have about this whole part uh, was like, yes, this needed to happen, but how did get they got the shuttlecraft and they went there? And this was after they had a crash of the shuttlecraft and they almost had one of their crew people die. So I was like, how did they even get permission? How did Chapel get? I don't think she got permission. I think they just kind of did it. And
Yeah.
so I thought that was off because I thought, well, I don't think that's going to happen, but it did happen. So that was one of the pieces of heartburn that I had with the episode.
Yeah. I would agree.
Yeah, yeah. So she is able to get the answer, or the not the cure, I should say, but the the reversal for Spock. And so I like the entrance that she does. They're in the midst and doing the ceremony, and she is able to cure him. And that moment between Chapel and Spock, if you remember that I thought that was great. So they're looking at each other, and you think they're about to embrace or about to kiss, and then injects him, and then he
Yep.
goes back to being Vulcan.
Yeah.
So
I did like, though, there was a scene between Spock and Chapel when he's still human, right? And because he's human, he doesn't really have this filter, this Vulcan filter built in, right?
yeah,
And he says, she's upset about, things that have happened, everything like that. And he notices she's upset and asks her, and he looks at her, and he's like, Vulcans can be such jerks. And then he offers her this real awkward hug because he doesn't really know how to be human because he's a Vulcan. He's not used to hugging and that kind of stuff, right?
yeah,
And so she gets to see a vulnerable side to him that she doesn't normally see because he's fully human, right? And unfortunately, that's when things are interrupted. That's when Spock's mom is beaming on board. But yeah, I found that an interesting dynamic, because now if it in Nurse Chapel's point of view, right? She's got to be thinking, well, he's not himself, right? He's pretty much missing half of himself, but yet she's getting to see a side of him she doesn't get to normally see, and she has feelings for him. So obviously, getting to see that side and having that emotional connection with him is probably something she enjoys, even though she knows full well this isn't really fully who he is.
mm-hmm. I love that way he delivered that line. Vulcans are such jerks, and
Yeah.
yeah, it was great. And then I mean, throughout the episode, you've got at the ceremony, you've got to Pring's mom kind of being a jerk through the time. So
Oh yeah. I mean, she is. It's very obvious that there isn't much that impresses her.
yeah,
Right. She's very hard to impress. Um, can I make a comparison
yeah,
here without you or anybody getting upset at me about this? So the way that Spock is having to um impress T'Pring's mom reminded me from an episode of Deep Space Nine. Um, when Jadzia is getting ready to get married, and she has to impress Grilka,
mm-hmm.
the wife of Martok, because Martok had invited Worf right into his house because Worf didn't have a house, right, after all the stuff that had happened. And so Worf joins the house of Martok. And because he's part of Martok's house, Grilka is, she's the woman of the house. And therefore part of the ceremony, because, Worf wants everything to be as close to authentically Klingon and all the rituals and all this stuff. And one of those things is Jadzia has to go through this huge long trial to impress Grilka, but nothing Jadzia can do impresses her, right? Kind of a fun episode that actually would be kind of fun to do a one-off sometime, a spotlight on. But
Yeah,
I saw some comparisons here, right? In this same kind of deal where Spock is having to go through these Vulcan rituals to impress T'Pring's mom, just like Jadzia had to go through to impress Grilka. So for whatever that's worth.
no, that's worth a lot. You could totally do a side by side comparison here.
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. That was excellent.
But it was just a reminder that we've seen something like this before, right? And it didn't typically go well the last time, at least for most of the episode. Once Grilka realized how great Jadzia is, like we all know she is, Grilka, warmed up to her. This was interesting the way they kind of played it out.
Yeah, it was good. I mean, Spock and T'Pring, they make it through the entire ceremony, and everything's acceptable. They make it through that rite of learning where they've got to hear the very hurtful things that T'Pring says to Spock, which was very, very, very harsh. But they're able to make it through. And
I'm sorry, Chris.
no, go ahead.
Hang on one second. All my DS9 fellow DS9ers are going to do unspeakable things to me for getting this wrong, but Grilka was not Martok's wife. As I kept saying
name?
As I kept saying, I'm like, I don't actually think this is right. Grilka is actually the Klingon woman that Quark marries.
Ugh.
The wife of Martok is Sorella. That's who
Sorella.
it is. So it's Sorella that Dax has to impress, and even to the point where I think Worf says something like, "I'm scared of her," or whatever. Martok's like, "Oh, don't worry, I'm scared of her too," or something,
Mhm.
something like that. And Martok's in awe of his wife and everything. But so sorry, I want to make sure I got that correct. It is Sorella who Jadzia was trying to impress, not Grilka. Grilka first came to mind, but that's if you remember the House of
Yeah.
Quark episode where Quark marries her to get that Klingon off of her back. Anyway, sorry. I just wanted to
No,
make sure
most
I set the
excellent.
record straight so that my fellow DS9ers didn't throw barbs at me.
Ah, most excellent. Most excellent. So Spock and T'Pring, they do make it through the ceremony. And T'Pring is like, well, you're able to make it like despite your human handicap, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
that's a handicap. And that's a bit of a that's a bit low.
Yeah. She likes those backhanded compliments. It was like, well, you impressed me despite your handicap
Yeah,
of being
her
half human.
compliments also are digs.
Yeah. But that sets off a great moment because you see that rise of anger uh, come up in Spock, and he's like, "Oh well, you don't think a human could have successfully passed this ritual?" And she's like, "Well, no, of course not." And that's where he reveals, "Well, guess what? A human did," and that kind of
And
shocks them all,
he
right?
pulled his ears off, didn't he?
Yeah, he pulled his ears off.
Yeah. I thought it was funny too during the ceremony, like, okay, when he first starts to practice, that the thing is super, like the teapot thing is super,
Yeah,
super, super hot. And he asks his mom how she does it or whatever. And I think I don't remember what she said, like focus or something like that. And so he does it during the ceremony. And like when he turns away so they can't see his face, he's like, oh, you can tell it's like it's hurting. He doesn't have the ability to shut the pain off like he does with his Vulcan side. So I found it very interesting because they not only does he go through the trial and he's able to get through all of the ceremony, but they show the fact while he's doing it, they show that he is struggling, but he's hiding it.
yeah, yeah. That's right. And they do a really good job of that.
Yeah.
I also like about Amanda in the comments that she makes because Amanda says these comments in a really nice, really well. She reacts to T'Pring and says, when T'Pring says, "Oh, well, you guys, you passed the ceremony," and Amanda kind of says, "Oh, that's very nice of you to say. I'm sure that was really difficult for you to say, or difficult for you to say, right?" So she
Yeah.
gives Amanda is like great because she gives these jabs like back very calmly but very nicely too. So I thought that was um, a great little add to Amanda's personality there.
And I would say that it's proof that the character of Amanda, she proves herself every time that they bring Spock's mom into Star Trek, whether it was in the original series or in TNG or now in Strange New Worlds. The character of Amanda and the women that have played the character prove over and over again why it's next to impossible for a normal human to be married to a Vulcan and deal with the Vulcan culture and the Vulcans themselves. But Amanda seems to be one of the very few who not only can deal with it, but seem to thrive, right? Because otherwise she wouldn't have married a Vulcan. She wouldn't have fallen in love with a Vulcan and married him and embraced herself into the culture. I mean, even even in this time period, right? You're talking a couple of 100 years after the Vulcans land on Earth.
Mhm.
Humans and Vulcans still don't really get along. And honestly, like throughout all of Star Trek and every Star Trek series we've seen, every iteration of it, there's always some kind of tension still here and there between Vulcans and humans because Vulcans kind of look down on humans. It's been kind of a trending, not trending, it's been kind of a consistent thing, right? Since the Vulcans land on Earth, you know, humans are not looked upon as nearly as intelligent or logical and all. I mean, all these different things, and it shows with T'Pring's mom saying, despite your physical handicap or whatever she said, um, there's a real sense of I don't want to say discrimination, but kind of a little bit, right?
Yeah,
Towards humans, and Spock is being kind of discriminated, not kind of is being discriminated against because he's half human.
yeah. You're absolutely right there about the discrimination. You know what would be interesting is there's so much to Amanda's character that I think we don't know about. You know
Yeah.
how the she's an extremely she's extremely intelligent. Um, so how that kind of evolved with her and Sarek, because Sarek respects her, right? And so th- there's all of that interplay there. So there's so much that they could go back in the history of that, and I think it'd be really neat to explore. Like I think
Yeah.
there's a whole bunch to Amanda's character and Sarek's character that they could really go
Yeah.
to and explore
And
there.
hopefully we'll get some more of Spock's parents in Strange New Worlds. I mean, we've got another season coming, right? So we know that at some point we'll get a season 3, and yeah, maybe we'll get some more Amanda. Maybe we'll get to see Sarek again. I don't think we haven't seen Sarek in Strange New Worlds, right? I
I
don't
don't think
think
we
we
have.
have,
Yeah,
because
yeah,
Spock and him are not on speaking terms right now. We know that. And I believe that even goes back to Star Trek Discovery
yeah.
when Spock shows up, albeit with a beard. Um, that they're not on speaking terms and everything else. So I think at some point we're going to get Sarek and some sort of hopefully resolution between him and Spock. And that would then maybe, I would assume then we would get Amanda as well. So we would get to see and hopefully peer more into Spock's life and his family dynamics.
Mhm. Yeah, that'd be outstanding to do because I mean we have had that with Spock before, but this is a different aspect. It's a different flavor, and it'd be really
Yeah.
nice to see how that goes. Yeah.
And we got some of that with Spock and Sarek and Amanda in the JJ movies. And while I don't consider them canon, it was interesting to see them do flashbacks to when Spock was a kid,
Hmm.
right? And he's studying and learning. He's being picked on by all the other Vulcans because he's half human and they call him all sorts of terrible names. And, he gets, obviously, it's a different universe, but he gets into the Vulcan Science Academy and turns it down to go to Starfleet. And you see this in a Vulcan way, loving relationship between Spock's father and him as a kid. And
Yeah.
you see Amanda, played by the amazingly talented Winona Ryder. Um, and so, yeah, I actually like that. I like seeing that aspect and that kind of upbringing of Spock and his young childhood that we hadn't seen before in that movie. Albeit the movie as a whole wasn't good, but I like that scene. So we have seen that, albeit in the JJ verse movies.
Yeah. Yeah, that's good. One of my favorite scenes of this episode. So this is when Spock reveals to Prill and to Pring's father, says, "Well, I'm human," and then he has this exchange with his mom, because they've said outright, "Hey, this human handicap, and no way a human could have passed this Vulcan like ritual." He says, "Well, a Vulcan did, and being human is not a handicap, like it's strength." And then he has very loving words to say about his mom right there, and he says, she's the one that stood by me, and helped me get through. And I don't recall that there had ever been an exchange like that between Spock and his mom in Star Trek. So I thought, oh, this was very meaningful, very beautiful. This is what it needed, and you saw that expression on Amanda's face, right? She teared up, and all she could say was thank you, Spock. Um,
And I think you're right because, I mean, this could only happen. Well, this could probably only happen in a situation like this, right, where
yeah.
Spock is fully human. So the emotions, the feelings, the thoughts, and everything that he's having now are not stuff that he's necessarily going to have or especially feel when he's his normal self. So to be able to have Spock open up and respond in that way and, you know, um, pay homage to his mother, and stand up for her, right?
Hmm.
Because, I mean, think about that. So she's living amongst Vulcans, right? How many times do you think she's been beat down by other Vulcans because she's married to one and had a kid with one and everything else? And how many times do you think she was stood up for?
Hmm.
Probably not many,
Yeah,
or at
very,
all for that
yeah, very
matter.
rare.
Spock's father has mentioned, well, he married her because it was the logical choice,
Hmm.
because they wouldn't say, oh, I married her because I loved her. But we learned in TNG, right, when Sarek was going through all that stuff and Picard took on his emotions for him so he could be the ambassador, that we learned through Picard how much Sarek actually loves Amanda, right? That emotional scene with Picard in his quarters, right? Taking on the burden of all those emotions, those deep, super powerful emotions, so that Sarek could focus on being that ambassador piece and have clarity of thought and be, your traditional stoic Vulcan. We learn that. So we know that Sarek deeply loves Amanda. He doesn't show it, doesn't really say it, but we know he does. But how many times do you think Amanda's been in situations where Vulcans have treated her like garbage and no one's been there to stand up for her? And now Spock's doing it because he's seeing it from the other side, right? He's human, fully human right now. So he sees it from that side. And I think that's a wonderful thing that they added in there.
It does. And we learn later that he had just had in the mind meld that they just had, it was a memory where he was accepted by other Vulcan boys, where she was still on the outside, not accepted by like Vulcan society. And so, I thought that was a great memory to share. Also very, very meaningful because it gave Spock that perspective, like to say, hey, this is how much his mother has done for him, how much his mother has stood by him.
And I really wish, I will say, I wish they would have actually shown that flashback.
Yeah,
not just talked about it. I kind of feel like that was something that was like a missed opportunity for them to show a young Spock going to school and his mother there and everything like that, and that whole thing, kind of like what they did in the first JJ Star Trek movie. I really felt like that was a missed opportunity to be able to kind of see a touching moment there.
Yeah, they could have took out some other stuff and have that.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, so we learned that. So there's a scene with T'Pring and Spock, and essentially, and you have to feel for T'Pring in this episode too, right? So T'Pring essentially says, she says, "Hey, why did you keep all of this from me? I'm your fiance. You didn't tell me about this. You didn't tell me what happened. You didn't tell me what you were going through. I didn't know, but it seems like everyone else knew. So you got to feel for her." And she says, "I think we just have to spend time apart."
Yeah.
And
in other words, they're kind of calling it off for now.
Yeah, calling it off now. So we'll see what happens after that. But later on, we've got the scene where Spock's in his quarters and he's about to go see Nurse Chapel, but he opens the door and Nurse Chapel's there, and they have this very, very nice scene together where they're trying to explore, where they're at, where their feelings, and Spock's like, "Hey, I've got these feelings, and I'm conflicted," and then they kiss, and so
I was gonna say they definitely explore.
Yeah, they do. So I thought that was good, really, really, really good, because I'm glad that Chapel and Spock got to get together. Yeah. This kind of takes it in a different path than from TOS, but I think this was nice.
Yeah, absolutely. There is a scene in this episode where we get the name, because it's a very random name, Charades. We think, oh, like the game. Well, yeah, it is like the game, because during that kind of awkward, scene, where T'Pring's mother and father are there, and they're just kind of like, it's a very awkward silence monkey moment. Pike's like, "Hey, I'm gonna stall. I need to, he needs to stall everything." And so, for Chapel to beam back aboard and arrive with the cure, right? And so he's like, instead of them doing the mimo, he's like, "Hey, we have an Earth tradition in our ceremony called a game of charades," right? And he kind of explains what it is and everything. And so that's kind of where we get the name.
Yeah.
For the episode. So it's very lighthearted moment. I thought Pike was very funny in this episode because he's there trying to support Spock and T'Pring, and he sees the awkwardness and the tension in the room, right? And he's constantly trying to break the tension and like slice it with a knife by doing something, whether it's offering up food or saying, making up random, traditions on Earth about playing games like charades. And I thought that was a very delightful moment.
It was. I liked the moment he's bringing back food for them. He's like, "Hey, let's get some more of this food." He's like, he's bringing it out, and the moment, this is right before the moment where Spock says, "Well, I was human, or a human past your ritual," and then you see Pike's expression. He's bringing out the food, and then he turns. He goes, "Oh, I'm leaving. I'm gonna leave now."
Yeah. Could you imagine how awkward it was for him for that whole thing? Like that had to have been super awkward. Like just trying to, he's there to support Spock, right? He's there to
Yeah.
help, and at every turn, it's just like he's trying to be supportive and help, and it's like, oh, okay, just never mind.
Yep.
Forget that.
I'm gonna go left now. I'm gonna go right now. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah, it was good.
exactly. Yeah, this was an episode that was fun and lighthearted. The Clearly, Spock learned a lot about himself, right? He learned a
Yeah.
lot about his human side that maybe he had not explored before. Well, he could not have explored his human side the way he did in this episode, whether it was eating the bacon and smelling the food, or you know, being in 10 forward and just laughing hysterically, and even to the point where like awkwardly, and like actually getting what the jokes mean. And so he'd start laughing, and then he kept laughing and laughing some more, and they're all looking at him like, okay, Spock, that's enough. Like, yeah, we get it. Just he doesn't. It's a character. It's a person who is learning and experiencing all these things. Think about like when Data first got his emotion chip and he was trying to deal with all that,
Mhm.
right? I mean, you see that in TNG, and you also see it in Star Trek Generations, right? Where Data gets that emotion chip and he's trying to learn how to balance and handle emotion. Like they're on the they're on the holodeck for Worf's promotion,
Yeah.
and he like pushes Dr.
Oh
Crusher in the
yeah.
water,
Yeah.
and he thinks that that's going to be humorous and a joke, and nobody thinks it's funny. He just doesn't get why them removing the plank with Worf was funny, but him not just randomly pushing Crusher in wasn't. And so you see kind of that awkwardness with Spock. And I think you've made this comment before, Chris, on in previous episodes of our podcast, where you've compared Data and Spock
Yeah.
in for because of their similarities, because Data really is kind of the Spock of TNG, right?
Yeah.
He's an android, but he very much deals with some of the same things that Spock does as far as not understanding human stuff. And so I think it's very interesting when you compare and contrast the two. And so with Data learning to deal with the emotion chip and having those emotions around, or in First Contact when they first start going in the hallway and he's like, I'm feeling uneasy and everything, and
Yeah.
Picard's like, Data, perhaps you should turn off your
Turns
emotion
off.
chip, and he does that. Yeah, Spock can't do that right now, but or ever. But it's an interesting comparison if you look at it, right? That Spock is experiencing in this episode his human side and going through some very similar things that Data went through.
Yeah. I think it's great. I like how so Spock's character and Data's character and Worf's character, they're they're all outsiders, right? So which is great because it's outsiders like looking in, exploring what it is either to be human, or what it is to be Klingon, or what it is to be Vulcan. You know, they're outsiders trying to become what they're observing.
Yeah.
And so I think that's a great kind of angle to look at it there. And for the audience to watch it, we learn a lot through it.
Yeah, we really do. We learn a lot about Chapel. We learn a
Yeah.
lot about T'Pring, right? And it's very obvious T'Pring has tried really hard to kind of make things work with her and Spock is he's kind of going off in his own path, right? And T'Pring is trying to meet him there, and it's just not working. And that's where, I felt both happy and a little bit sad at the end of this episode, because I feel sad for T'Pring and the fact that this relationship you know, that it's they're parting ways,
Hmm.
but yet also happy because now there's something new growing out of this with Spock and Chapel, and we get to see a little bit more of that in the next episode, Lost in Translation, which we will be discussing very soon. It will be out very soon if you are watching this, or maybe you're watching after the fact, it'll already be out because we're just gonna boom, boom, boom and get ourselves caught up here.
Yeah.
But yeah, I think it's very interesting the way that they approached some of these relationships and kind of where they're taking this relationship with Chapel and Spock.
Me too. We'll see. I hope this carries on. This will be a good one.
Yeah, I think so too. This is a very interesting episode. It was nice to have a little bit of a lighthearted episode. I think like I said, I think Ethan Peck does a great job as Spock. I thought he was fantastic being a human, fully human Spock and being awkward. And I've been very, very happy with his performance in this role. This is, you know, if you're an actor and you get cast as the role of Spock, I mean, talk about some huge shoes to fill, right? The only other like adult Spock besides Leonard Nimoy, I believe, is Zachary Quinto, right? We haven't had any other Spocks other than him, right? I mean, Ethan Peck played Spock in Discovery,
Hmm.
and then has now carried that, albeit a weird looking Spock with like friggin' a beard, and it was strange. And then carried that over into Strange New Worlds to more of the Spock that we know. Uh, but I've really enjoyed his performance in this
Yeah.
character.
Yeah. As of I much more comedic and lighthearted moments with Spock
Oh yeah.
than we've seen before. Even when he was like given the harp, right, in an earlier episode, and he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna use this harp."
Yeah, or where there was a noise
Yeah.
disturbance, and he's like, I will attempt to practice less aggressively, or whatever the line was really
Yeah.
funny. Yeah, he has a good delivery, comedic delivery, being a character that's not supposed to show an emotion.
Yeah.
But obviously in this episode he does, right? He goes through a gambit of emotions when he's fully human,
Yeah.
which I think helps him. Obviously, like you brought up that great scene between him and his mom, and him kind of coming to her defense, and standing up for her and supporting her and thanking her. But I think that becoming fully human gives him such a much deeper appreciation for his mom and what she goes through. But I think it also just gives her deeper appreciation for him as a whole, right? Like understanding that, hey, my human side is not a handicap. You
Hmm.
know, it's a part of who I am. It's part of what makes me me and makes me unique, right? There's not too many half human, half Vulcans that we meet in Star Trek, right?
Yeah. His mom also gives him some great advice at the end before she goes back to Vulcan. Just a very quick line. It's, she says, it's hard to love a Vulcan. It was something like that.
Yeah.
And that will make Spock think like, oh, well, then perhaps he'll have more empathy and more understanding for Nurse Chapel's like position that she's in, right? And be
Yeah.
able to, um, to be able to make that their relationship better.
And honestly, it only makes sense for Spock to be drawn to a relationship with a human female
I agree.
because
Yep.
he himself is half human,
Yeah.
right? I mean, you could argue, well, wouldn't it make sense for him to be drawn to a Vulcan woman because he's half Vulcan? Could be. But I think the emotion side of it, and now experiencing what he went through as fully human, and having more empathy of what his mother deals with on a daily basis, probably makes that draw to Nurse Chapel even stronger.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah. Absolutely. I agree.
Yeah. So, but yeah, this was great. This is a great episode. It was lighthearted. It was fun. It was a nice little break from that last episode, episode 4. Man, that episode took a toll on me. It took some out of me a little bit in a good
Yeah.
way, like just in a self-reflective way. Um, so this was a nice little break. Lost in Translation was very good as well. It's the next episode 6, that we're gonna get to soon. And well, tomorrow we're gonna talk about it tomorrow, and it'll be out very soon after that. So I look forward to talking about that because there's a very, very touching moment with a returning character, and I can't wait to for us to share our thoughts about that too.
Me too. It'll be great to talk through. Yeah,
Yeah,
excellent, man.
absolutely. Yeah, for sure. So yeah, thank you always so much for watching and listening to us all over the interwebs. And if you haven't already, check us out on Facebook and Instagram. Follow us there. Be sure to hit if you're watching us on YouTube, be sure to go down to the description and you can check out our social media links there. You can check out our Teespring store, grab yourself some random Redshirt swag, whether it's a mug, sticker, sweatshirt, hoodie, t-shirt, long sleeve, whatever you name it. You can join the random Redshirt away team with us. And
I love that.
yeah, the random Redshirt away team. Yeah, where all the red shirts go and they all survive. Yeah,
Yeah.
that'd be the day, right? But yeah, we do appreciate it. As always, if you are listening to us on your favorite podcast platform, you can also find the video version of this on YouTube. And if you're here on YouTube, you can find all of our episodes, especially the ones that are not recorded with video, on your favorite podcast platform, wherever you get your podcasts. So thank you so much for tuning in and watching as always, and we will catch you next time right here on the Random Redshirt Podcast.